everything I've ever done in my life, I didn't want to do. Everything, every day. I'm a lazy piece of shit. And I'm one of the hardest working people that ever stepped foot on this planet Earth. Your mind has a tactical advantage over you at all times. It knows your weaknesses, it knows your strengths, and it will guide you into your nice comfort zone.
Yeah.
We have to reprogram our mind to get like a different vantage point, so then you know how to be in charge of yourself.
Yep.
Versus your mind being in charge of you.
Well, there's purity in physical pursuits, right? Because it doesn't matter what your social status is. It doesn't matter how people perceive you. When it comes down to how long can you stay in that pool, when it comes down to how far can you run, right. When it comes down to how much can you push yourself past the part where you want to quit, right. How far can you keep going? There's a purity in that it dissolves social order, all that bullshit, what people think about you goes out the window. It's who are you right now?
That's right.
Who are you right now?
That's a true statement, man. And I look at it as psychological warfare. And that's where I started learning that life is one big psychological warfare that you play on yourself. You play on yourself, man. The most important conversation I ever had is with myself. And the shit I was telling myself was so tough, it was so wrong, it was so misguided. And other people start to write that dialogue for you also. And it starts to be what you say to yourself every single day. And I started creating a whole nother warfare, a whole nother battle started becoming. I was like, oh, hang on a second, Goggins. You have these tools. You have these tools. Your life was basically the perfect grounds for training for where you need to go in your life. All the beatings, all the bullying, all the, you going through learning disabilities, all the struggles. It was the absolute perfect training ground for you to go to where you need to go. And that's how I started looking at my life versus woe is me, poopy pants, kick a rock down the street mentality. It was, God just hooked you right the fuck up. He hooked you right up, man, with the perfect place. You were training for the first 18, 19, 20, you were training for this stuff, man. You have the advantage of everybody else versus, my God, they're so above me. They came from a great family. Mom and dad love them. They didn't have to learn, they didn't stutter, they didn't struggle. No, man, your struggle is what made you who you are now. So I started flipping this into a whole different, I started being a master of what I was scared of. I was scared of my mind. And I became literally a master of that mind. And that's what from now on, it sets me apart from most people. I started diving into that. I had to teach myself, I had to earn my way just to get in the Navy.
Right.
Let alone be a SEAL. And I quit Air Force training and now I'm going for the best. So my self-esteem, even though I was building it up and I lost weight and stuff like that, I'm now around the most uncommon of uncommon people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, my God, I'm here.
Yeah.
Do I belong here?
Yes.
Do I belong? Do I belong here? So your mind has a good way of taking the path of least resistance. Whenever friction happens, friction causes growth. Whenever friction happens, that's why a lot of us don't have any growth, because when friction happens, we go the opposite direction. So in my mind, when friction happened, my mind said, oh, hey, man, let's get out of here,
You're
man.
a fraud.
Yeah. You're not real.
Right.
You've lied your whole life. You come from this, you can barely read.
Right.
Those things, so whenever times got hard, my mind said, you're not good enough.
Right.
Let's go.
Right.
So my mind wasn't, my eyes, my mind weren't connecting.
Right. So how do you combat that?
So how you combat that is this. I call it the cookie jar.
Okay.
You have to remind yourself. We all have a story. We've all of us have gone through very hard times. But when we're in a hard time, our mind has a way of forgetting what all we've overcome. I have a way of taking 1 second when I want to quit and saying, okay, you endured this. So I look at my life and how I came up as the ultimate training ground. Versus most people look at it as why? Woe is me. God, why?
Right, exactly.
Why?
Right.
I had to flip this upside down and say, hang on a second. God was training me to be one of the baddest men on the planet Earth.
Absolutely right.
That's how this was my journey.
Do you begin to realize in this moment how mentally strong you are?
Yes, because those things beat me.
Sure.
But they didn't kill me.
No, not at all.
And I was able to work around them and figure out ways through it. So when I was in the worst time of my life in Hell Week, I looked at everybody and said, I'm the most trained person here.
Yeah, well, that's the truth.
I've gone through more mental torture than any of you all can even fathom.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the baddest people on the planet. I'm looking at them like this. you guys can't hold a stick. So I started looking at verses like I don't belong here, versus like I might be the baddest person to ever come here.
Wow.
Who could have pulled this off? Who could have been given a sewer to live in their mind and say, okay, at birth, I'm gonna put you in the worst place on the planet Earth and let me see if you can go to the top of the mountain with nothing.
Right.
But just hard work, grit, and figuring it out and not putting yourself back in the dungeon every time something got hard. So that's what became my daily voice was, you really are the baddest person on the planet.
Right.
And after a period of time, you start to believe that.
Right.
And so that's what happened to the first Hell Week, the second Hell Week, the third Hell Week. That became my new norm.
Yeah.
So what most people fear, I can never go through one. I don't want to go through two.
Right.
Even SEALs would tell you that. That Navy, so I did 18 months in Navy SEAL training. It's only supposed to be 6 months long.
Right.
It became my new norm.
Right.
And that's what people don't do enough of. You're always looking for a new norm. And that's how my mind started saying, getting beat, getting tortured, suffering, broken legs, kidney issues. This is my new norm. And my mind started changing with the reality of who I want to be.
Yeah.
But people go, man, you have such a strong will. It's something that you build. Like, I never forget, I was on a podcast one time, and this dude goes, you were blessed with a strong mind. Like, the hell are you talking about? I was blessed with a strong mind. That's something that you have to develop. You develop that over years, decades of suffering and going back into the suffer. That's why a lot of people who graduate Navy SEAL training, they want to know, like, I talk about it very openly all the time. A lot of guys don't want to go back into that water. Don't want to go back into the hard stuff. And maybe not anything hard in life. Once you get through it, it's like you become a POW. Like, how many POWs want to go back to POW camp? None. When something sucks so bad in life, very few people want to go back. They're happy they graduated. I realized I'm the same way. I don't want to go back. I have to go back. I must go back, because that is exactly where all the knowledge of my life exists, was back there, and what you're talking about. Well, I didn't know anything about this, but how I grew a will was constantly doing these things. To now, it's just life. I wake up, while it still sucks, it's just life. You don't sit back and like, oh my God, like, I have days I don't want to do it, but I know I'm going to do it. I know from years of just doing it. So that's beautiful, and this is why I came on here with you today. And I'm glad that you're talking about this, because human beings need to hear this. They need to stop hearing these hacks on this and that. There's no fucking hack, bro. There's no fucking hack. Yeah, you may this and that and saunas and all this shit it's great. There is no fucking life hack. To grow that thing, how do you grow it? Do it and do it and do it and do it. That's the hack. The hack is gonna fucking suck. And that's what I realized. Life, that's why I wanted to come on here today. I didn't want to come on here and talk about no fucking passion and purpose and how to get the fuck out of bed and how to hit a fucking alarm clock and all this catchphrase bullshit, because that wasn't how I lived. I woke up like every human being does and goes, man, I'm a fucking piece of shit today. How the hell is this gonna work out for me? And you fight that. You don't override it. There's no override button. It's the conversation in your head. So how do you do that? We don't have enough of these conversations about the real conversation that every human being is having. And they have no idea how to get out of it, but they do. It's that shit right there, man. You gotta build your will.
Would you say you've built this almost like sadistic quality where you almost enjoy the pain?
I don't enjoy it. It's necessary.
Yeah.
It's necessary. So every morning I wake up, it's not just about working out, but for me, working out has been a very big part of my mental growth. So for me, if I am not challenging myself every day, and I swear to God, people will not believe it, I was over almost 300 pounds twice in my life. A person that does that twice in his life does not enjoy cardiovascular activity, okay?
Yeah.
So people can put anything they want to in their head. I did realize one thing. The things I don't enjoy that I still do, that's where growth is at. And that's, for me, the only place growth is at. is in that very uncomfortable, in that uncomfortable zone.
Yeah.
So I have to visit it every single day.
Do you ever have a day where you just think, okay, I can't be asked to do anything. I'm not going for a run. I'm not stretching. I'm doing nothing.
Every day.
Yeah. So you have the thought, but you don't have the day.
Every day.
Do you ever let yourself have a day where you just watch Netflix?
Never, because
Some
guess
good shit
what?
on Netflix.
I'm haunted. No, I can't do it. I can't do it. There may be some days I get up with poopy pants, and I'm like, you know what, man? F this, man. Like, what am I training for?
Yeah.
I have no race on the docket. Why am I having such a structured life? Why? And I'm like, you know what? I'm good. I'm done. I retire every day.
Yeah.
I'm done with this shit. And I sit around and I say, okay. And then this is my thought process. So you want to be normal. So you just want to be like everybody else that roams the world, not knowing the power that's in them. Being fine with being mediocre. You want to go back to who you were, huh, David? I'm like, that, man.
And you have that conversation with yourself every day?
Not every day, it's those bad days.
Yeah.
It's those bad days. I see a whole bunch of people walking around out here who have no idea how talented they truly are. Now I'm talking about talent, like some God-given ability. Talent that sometimes you have to hone, you have to work on, and you have to harness yourself. And they just walk around just on their phones, just clueless to how powerful they are. Everything I've ever done in my life, I didn't want to do. Everything, every day. I'm a lazy piece of shit. And I'm one of the hardest working people that ever stepped foot on this planet Earth. And I'm saying that very proudly because I know what I do. It's not, I'll tell you I'm stupid, and I'll also tell you the exact opposite of what I've done. It's the truth. It is the truth. So imagine how much I've developed in that time frame. But this is the scary thing. Why most people don't want to do that, build that willpower, is because it is scary. It unlocks a whole bunch of things about who you are and who you're not. And a lot of people don't want to go down that journey to discover who they are and who they're not. Because it's not a pretty journey. I mean, I've gone down it. It's not like I went down it once. I go down it all the time. And when you unlock that, and you can't just turn it off. Like people say, hey, well, how come you haven't retired yet? I built all this willpower. Do you think it's gonna let me just retire because my knees hurt? It's telling me every morning, I wake up like, man, my knees hurt, my legs hurt, my body hurts, but you can still run. So why aren't you running? If you can still run, there'll be a time when you can't lace them up anymore, but you can still run. So I still run. When the time comes I can't run, the body will say, you just can't run. But if I can still do something, that willpower that I have created, it makes me do it every day. And that's what they don't get. What builds a human being is you start with the small building blocks. And before you know it, man, you become something that it doesn't even make sense to most people because it's just who you are now. That's why I can still run at 50 at 49 with broke down knees and broke down body. Because my body knows you still can, therefore I do. Second you stop, the willpower is gone.
That's such an important point when you're talking about the working out, because a lot of people, when they think about working out, they think of it as being a physical thing.
Right, no. I did it for mental.
Yeah.
People always say, my God, like, no, don't look at it like, I didn't care about losing weight. I didn't care about being the fastest person. I wasn't making the Olympics. I wasn't going to pros. I could barely read and write when I was in a junior in high school. I wasn't going anywhere. I saw working out as a way for me to build calluses on my mind. I had to callous over the victim's mentality. So I watched these movies. I talked about Rocky last time I was on here. I always equated training to mental toughening. Like, it always looked brutal. People waking up early and doing all these things, and it looked horrible. I was like, wow, man, I gotta start doing that. Not to get better, bigger, and stronger, but that is what's gonna build me. That looks uncomfortable. That looks brutal. And getting up early, I don't wanna do that. So I made this long list of things that I don't wanna do. And through that, I found myself. I started, I'm like, you guys aren't doing this shit in high school. You guys aren't getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, running over here in this golf course. So I started seeing myself very differently than the average human being. I was like, hang on a second. I have something they don't have. And that's when I started to develop these things through working out. It was this great, never-ending work ethic. And through work ethic, I developed self-esteem. I watched a lot of movies, and I was really big into visualization. And I always equated working out to struggle. And I struggled my whole life, but I ran from it. So I started realizing, man, I gotta start facing the struggle, and I gotta be mentally strong for the struggle. So that's where I started coming up with like, I'm training for life. Mentally, I'm training for life. I'm not training for like to lift 400 pounds. And I found out on my own pretty much, is that through discipline, through self-discipline, through repetition, through tons of repetition of the same thing that you don't want to do, and that's the key thing. Through repetition of things you don't want to do, you develop mental, like an armor for your mind. Start to armor your mind, because your mind's like, okay, we suffer every day. That's what we do. We do stuff that sucks every day. So then when the suck stuff comes, you're ready for it. And that's how I started coming up. You know, I just started being very uncomfortable, and now it's like just a way of life. So my self-talk is like no one else's self-talk.
And by the way, this was a question that probably 50 people asked. What does he say to himself?
So this is what I say to myself. It changes all the time. But let's say for shits and giggles, I'm training for a 100-mile race.
Yeah.
So let's say I'm training for a 100-mile race, and I get to mile 50.
Yeah.
And I feel like shit. And like everybody else, my mind gets soft. Why? Because I'm human.
Yeah.
I'm not some damn, hybrid creature that was formed from the heavens above. No, not. Human. I suffer, I don't like it, I'm uncomfortable, I don't like it.
Yeah.
So my mind starts to get weak, and we start to forget about how badass we are. I call that the cookie jar, but it's not about the cookie jar right now.
Yeah.
This is about self-talk.
Yeah.
But the cookie jar kind of goes to self-talk
Piece of
too.
it, yeah.
It's a piece of it. So basically what I do here is you have to make sure that your mind doesn't become spastic. When it's suffering, when it's in pain, all it wants to do is find the easy way out, which is usually quit. If you quit, the pain goes away immediately.
Yeah.
You gotta give yourself enough energy and fuel in your mind to stay just a little bit longer so you can talk yourself into staying for the whole thing.
Yep.
And this is how it works. Most of us never start anything cold. If you're gonna go to college, you gotta study your ass off. If you wanna run a 100-mile race, a marathon, if you wanna go be Mr. Olympia, if you wanna go be a scientist, a doctor.
Be one of the best salespeople on the planet.
You
Be an
gotta
entrepreneur.
work.
You gotta work.
But this
and
is
you
what
gotta
we do.
build. You gotta build up to that.
But what happens is, in that moment where we need self-talk, when we're failing and we're in our worst spot possible,
Yep.
we forget the back end.
Yeah.
Oh, my fault, the front end. All the build up to where we're at today. We forget how much work we put in. So for me, I'm at mile 50.
Say that one more time. Say that one. So I'm in the middle of it.
Right.
I'm making my calls. I hate it. You're at mile 50.
That's right.
You hate it. Your mind's getting, wiggly on you.
I just want to get out of here.
Yeah.
We forget that we put years.
Yeah.
Years, maybe not into making these dials, but to getting where you're at today.
To become this person.
To become this person, to be in a position to make this money, whatever the f- you want to make, whatever you want to do in your life.
Yeah.
We forget that. We forget that journey on what it took for us to get in this moment to make the right decision.
Yeah.
So that's my self-talk is this. Okay, I want to get the fuck out of here, man. I'm done. Then I remember this. You ran 2,000 miles training to be in this moment right now. We forget that.
Yep.
We forget the 3 o'clock in the morning runs or getting up early for work or whatever you're doing. We forget all that. In that moment of suffering, I remind myself,
Yeah.
I only have 50 more miles. I put in 6 months of training.
You did 67,000 pull-ups.
67,000 pull-ups, that's right.
30, right?
Exactly.
This is no big deal.
We forget all of that.
Yeah.
So what I do, my self-talk is basically going back down memory lane.
Yeah.
Of all those up days, I ran in the fucking rain, or I had to fucking study real late at night, and I didn't want to do it, but I did it to get here.
Yeah. That's the hook.
That is the hook.
That's the hook.
I wanted to get here.
Yeah.
Now you're here, and now you want to fucking quit.
Yeah.
So you gotta be mindful, but this thing about it, if you haven't put in any hard work to reflect on, you're fucked.
Yeah.
So there is no self.
Because you got nothing to pull back on.
It's just a lie.
Nothing to say, hey, you've done this before.
That's right.
Or you've done something like this
That's
before.
right. All this like people want to be all positive, all this positive talk, it doesn't work if it's a lie. Like if you didn't study for your big exam and you go into it saying, I'm gonna pass it,
Yep.
no, you're not.
Yeah.
You're gonna fail it.
Yeah.
That self-talk is not gonna work. Self-talk without real work is just a lie.
Yeah.
So my self-talk is me reminiscing back on the struggle to get to this moment.
Yeah.
And that tells me we're not quitting today.
Yeah.
Not today.
Yeah, yeah.